Hello, I'm Marian Lajwa from the Telfer Career Center, and I'm here to talk to you today about something that's essential when it comes to opening doors for your future, and that's effective interviewing. Part of our mandate at the Career Center is to help Telfer students stand above the competition, and I'm hoping that the tips that I share with you today will help you to shine when the moment counts. So the things that I'd like to talk about today, I've outlined some learning objectives for us, and I'd like to speak about securing the interview. I'd like to talk a little bit about the preparation process, job interview etiquette. I'd like to also talk about some of the interview questions you could come across, some of the different interview formats that you might see, tips for making a good impression, and we'll talk briefly about the final steps in the process as well. So let's start with securing an interview. So the first step in securing an interview is really understanding what you have to offer and then matching that with the opportunities that are out there. So that really starts with understanding your own personal brand. Now, branding has become a really hot topic these days, and if we go to a formal definition of branding, basically, it's the marketing practice of creating a name or an image that identifies and differentiates a product from other products. And in this case, that product is you. So you really do need to think about what benefits do you offer, what qualities do you want your audience to associate with you, and your audience is the employer, and you need to think about, well, what makes me different? What makes me unique? What's my brand promise? What is it that I'm offering? And why should an employer choose me over the other candidates? So once you've established your personal brand, then you need to integrate that into your marketing tools. So that might be your resume, your cover letter, your LinkedIn profile, and really your resume is no longer just a two-page summary of your experiences and what you've done. It's really a marketing tool, and in a sense, it's the essence of your brand. So I think that really changes how we approach creating that document and tweaking it when we're applying to different jobs. And whether the information about you is being presented in written format, in a resume or a cover letter, or whether it's online, or whether it's verbal within the interview, it's really important that all of that information is connecting with the brand that I was talking about earlier and the image that you want to put out there. The next thing that's important to remember is that jobs unfortunately aren't just going to fall into your lap because you're graduating and because you have good grades. It is really important to think about how are you going to get out there and meet people and incorporate active techniques into your job search. The passive techniques are really the online strategies, and because 80% of jobs are found through networking, through the hidden job market, it's important to get yourself out there and meet people, and it's those people that can maybe point you in the right direction, give you some great advice, or introduce you to people who are in more of a hiring position. So some of the ideas that I have for you are joining a student or professional association. All of those people have the potential to help you out. Attending multiple networking events. Now, those events allow you to meet employers, but it's also really a chance for you to get comfortable in front of employers and build on your networking skills so that when you're in an interview, you feel more comfortable and you can be yourself. Also, setting up information meetings. So sitting down with somebody in a role that interests you and learning a little bit about what they do on a regular basis, how they got to where they are, what they love about what they do, what they find challenging, and what advice they might have for somebody looking to go in the direction that you're thinking about. So that advice can be golden. It's something that, can give you ideas about where to go from there, and they may have suggestions on who you should speak to or what you should do next in order to secure something in that area. Also using social media. It's changed the way that we look for work, the way that employers look for candidates. So it's important that you incorporate that into your strategy. And it's also a way to really manage your network, understand who's in it, stay in touch with your contacts, and a way to build your network as well. And then, of course, volunteer work is also a really great strategy. Just by getting out there, again, you're meeting people. You could be very strategic about what kind of volunteer work you're doing. So it could be related to your professional interests. and then that could turn into something afterwards as well, but it could also be linked to personal interests or a cause that's really close to your heart. And when you're volunteering with others, you're helping someone out, someone will be your supervisor, so they're in a position afterwards to maybe want to help you. And you may potentially have access to their very rich networks as well. Now you've thought about your personal brand, you've put together a really fabulous marketing package, you've incorporated active job search strategies into your approach. Now you're starting to get the calls for the interview. So you need to make sure that you're approaching the preparation process properly. So you definitely want to do research on the company, understanding who they are, what they focus on, what their vision is, who their clients are, what their services are, and so you can link that then to your own personal profile and speak about that. You also need to really understand the job that you're applying for. So I recommend that you go through line by line when you're looking at that posting and think about, well, how do I meet each of these qualifications and what stories do I have to back up the fact that I'm a good fit and can do these things. You also need to know yourself and what you have to offer, so you need to be able to articulate those key skills and qualities that you bring to the table that are going to allow you to be successful in this role. You also need to review your resume and know its contents. So everything on that document is fair game, and they probably will want to know a little bit more detail since a resume is more of a summary. So you want to be ready to elaborate basically on everything that's there. You can also anticipate questions and practice answers. So by going through the posting, you can get a sense of what they might ask, and then you can practice that. It could be with friends, with family, with the Career Center, even in front of the mirror. And by practicing, it allows you to sort through your thoughts. It allows things to come out in a more fluid, organized way during the interview. Now, I would never recommend memorizing anything, because you do want to be in the moment with the employer, but just having a chance to practice beforehand, because it always sounds different when you go to say it out loud than it did when you were thinking about it in your head. It can really help you on the big day. You can also prepare documentation that you might want to bring. So maybe you've got a portfolio, or maybe you've got some relevant projects that, really speak to the fact that you've done some practical things in this area, or maybe you've been collecting letters of reference along the way as well. And at the end of an interview, you could always say, I've actually brought some copies of some letters of reference with me, and I think it really speaks to the contribution that I've made to past organizations and really highlights how I can help you as well. Also, you want to plan your route, map out your day. It sounds really simple, but we've all heard horror stories about people that have been late for an interview, and that can just start things off on the wrong foot. So make sure you're giving yourself enough time, you know where you're going, and then give yourself a pep talk. Again, that sounds really simple, but the power of positive thinking is tremendous. You want to make sure that you're not just focusing on the negative, how nervous you are, how everything is riding on this interview, because then that has the possibility of taking you down a negative spiral. If you go in and you think, I've done the work, I've done my preparation, I know how I fit with this job, I've got stories to back that up, this is just my chance to tell my story, and I know my story better than anybody else, then you're in the right headspace. Everybody has nerves when it comes to interviews, and nerves can be a good thing. They can give us a little bit of energy, some adrenaline, but it's what we do with those nerves and how we manage them that makes all the difference. Let's talk a little bit about etiquette at this point. So we talked about not being late, but also you don't want to be too early. So if you showed up 45 minutes beforehand, they might not be ready for you. You might throw them off a little bit. So if you're someone who likes to be really early, that's okay. Get there early, sort of check out where you need to go, but then maybe go aside, sit on a bench, go through your notes or sort through your thoughts, and maybe come in 10 minutes before. I think that would be absolutely fine. Dress to impress, dress for success. You want to show them that this is something that's important to you, that you've taken some time to get ready, and it says something about you when you're dressed professionally, and I think it also allows you to hold yourself a little bit differently in the moment as well. So you definitely want to have an interview outfit ready, and even if it's a very casual environment that you're going into, I would still recommend dressing up because it is showing that this is important to you, as I mentioned. Act appropriately and professionally with everyone in the office. And I say that because each person that you meet might be asked by the decision maker What did you think? What was your sense of that person? What kind of vibe did you get? And if they're all very valued team members, their opinion is going to make a difference. So make sure that you're acting professionally from the moment you walk into that office. Don't bring up salary, benefits, or holidays at the first interview. They want to know that you're there for the right reasons, that you're not just there for the money, that you're there because you want to be there. You want to work for their organization. You want to do those duties. So that can be left for a second interview, or you can wait till they bring it up, basically. It is possible that they may ask the question, what are your salary expectations? So it's a good idea to have done a little bit of research beforehand. You can look at similar positions, check out what the salaries are, and then you're able to say, based on the research that I've done on similar positions, I'd be comfortable with something in this range. And that gives you a little bit of wiggle room to work with, maybe at the negotiation phase as well. Listen carefully, and I say that because sometimes people hear a keyword and they think, I've practiced this one, I've got this one, and they go into a pre-prepared answer. And we've heard from employers that that's a huge pet peeve, so you want to make sure you listen to the question all the way through because it might be slightly different than what you think. If you need to ask clarifying questions, that's okay, and even if you need to take a little bit of time to think, that's okay as well. So if they throw a real zinger at you, it's okay to say, wow, that's a great question. Is it okay if I take a minute to think about it? They'd much rather you take that moment to sort through your thoughts than just start talking because you feel you need to start speaking. So if you need to do that, once or twice, that's okay as well. Be cool and confident without coming across as being arrogant. There's definitely a fine line there, and you want to make sure that you're on the right side of the fence. Thank the interviewers for their time. It's a long process for them, so you want to be very respectful of that and thank them for their time. And offer a firm handshake at the beginning and at the end of an interview. So you want to make sure that you're starting things off on the right foot, you're showing confidence, and that you're ending things in the right way as well. And there's a few things to keep in mind with a handshake. You definitely want to make sure you're coming in straight with your hand, not too curves, because then it's awkward for the person to grab your hand. You want to make sure that it's not too strong, that it's not too limp either. So you're finding that nice balance. And you want to make sure that you're coordinating the eye contact and the smile with the handshake so that it all comes together in a nice, neat little package. Now let's talk a little bit about the different questions that you can come across. So there's some traditional general questions that tend to pop up in most interviews, and they're more getting to know you questions, icebreakers, ones that you really should be able to answer quite easily, and they're ones that you can think about before. So I would definitely recommend doing that. So things like, tell me about yourself. An interview often starts off with a question like that. So what I would usually recommend as a student, first start talking about what you're doing now. What's your degree, some key things maybe about your classes. Then talk a little bit about what you've done in the past. So experiences, involvement, that could sort of trickle into skills and qualities that came out of that. And then what you'd like to do in the future. And that allows you to bring them into your story, to talk about what you're looking to do next and how you're really excited to join their team because it allows you to do that. So talking a little bit about your present, a little bit about your past, and a little bit about your future as well. If you are a professional already, then I would probably recommend starting past, present, and future. But if you cover those three sort of spaces in your life, you're going to have a very complete answer. Also things like what strengths do you bring to the table? Is there an area of improvement that you've identified for yourself? Why do you want to work for us in particular? Why should we hire you? And what questions do you have for us? So it's important to have thought about all of those things in advance so that you're comfortable answering them because they tend to come up quite often in an interview. The other thing that I want to chat about now is behavioral questions. So this has become a quite common way of conducting an interview, and that's including the behavioral questions. And basically a behavioral question sounds like this. Tell me about a time when you demonstrated leadership. Describe a situation that showcases your analytical abilities. So the premise behind behavioral questions is the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. So they want to get a sense of how you handled things in the past to predict what you would do in the future in their work environment. So what we recommend doing is using the STAR method. So giving a quote-unquote STAR answer. and using those letters to walk yourself through that process. So the S stands for situation, give them an idea of what's going on, the lay of the land. If it's a project, talking a little bit about that. Then moving into the task, so what is the thing that you needed to do specifically? Then moving into the actions, what are all the details related to how you sorted through that issue, how you solved that problem, and finally the result. Funny enough, a lot of people forget about the result because they've just talked about all the actions, but it's really important to have a nice summary statement at the end, just to sort of highlight how it all turned out and that you were able to work through this in a very positive way. A few tips related to behavioral questions. Make sure that you're choosing a very specific answer or situation, because if you're talking about, say they ask you a question like, tell me about a time where you dealt with a difficult customer and how you handled that. And if you talk in general terms about dealing with difficult customers, it's hard to go through the action piece. But if you say, well, there was this one time where a customer came to the counter and this is what happened, and then you talk them through how you handled that, you can really go through all the details of what you did. So that's really important. The other thing is if you choose to talk about a group project, which is very possible, especially as a student, you want to make sure that you're really highlighting your role within the group because that's what they're really interested in. Now, situational questions are in the same family as behavioral questions. Basically, the employer gives you the S, they tell you what's going on, what the situation is, and they want to know how you would handle it. So that's how you approach that question. You talk about what you would do and how you hope it would turn out. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about the different formats that you could come across when it comes to interviews. So many of you may have had a phone interview. A lot of times that's more of a screening interview. It's just making sure that you meet all the key qualifications and then they can decide whether they want to put you into the next round. But it is very possible that it's the real deal. So you would want to prepare the same way in terms of your research, thinking about questions, and even if you've done a little bit of the prep for another interview, if it tends to be that screening interview, that's okay. What's nice about a phone interview is you can actually have some things in front of you as a bit of a safety net, so your resume, some notes, but you do want to make sure that you don't get caught reading those notes because then that might not feel like a natural conversation from there, but it is nice to have that safety net. And you do need to make sure that you're injecting energy into your voice because they can't see your eyes, they can't see your smile, so you need to make sure that you're being conscious of putting that into the conversation so they know that you're excited about this role. A panel interview is when there's more than one person in front of you. Sometimes that can feel a little bit intimidating, but try to think of it in a positive way. Maybe it's speeding up the process, and maybe it's making the process more objective because they actually do need to talk about who they're going to choose afterwards. One thing that you do want to remember with a panel interview, you want to address your answers mostly to the person that asked you the question, but you also want to glance at the other interviewers to make sure that you're connecting with them and that you're including them in your answer as well. Skype interviews have become very popular. They kind of go a little bit further than that phone interview because they can see you, so you do want to make sure that you're dressed professionally, that your background is very professional as well. A few other little tips: make sure that you're maintaining good eye contact with the webcam. You need to treat them as your eyes. And if you do experience some technical difficulties, make sure that you address them right away. And make sure it's not your first time using Skype as well. You want to practice beforehand just so you feel more comfortable with the process as well. Case interviews, usually they will tell you if it's a case interview, so it gives you a chance to review your cases from class and just think about how you worked through those cases. Because basically what the employer wants to see is how you approach a problem and how you break down a complex situation into logical components. There can obviously be more than one answer to a case, so you just want to show them how you're working through it and then show them that you can make some really great recommendations from what you found. Group interviews, so that's when everybody's in the same room being interviewed at the same time. You do want to try to stand out from the other candidates, but not at their expense. You never want to speak negatively about them. If you're all answering the same question, then it's okay to agree with what somebody else said, but you want to add something unique to make you stand out as well. And you want to be conscious of how you're interacting with the other people in the room. They may have you doing group activities or just watching to see how you're interacting. So maybe looking for interpersonal skills or teamwork abilities as well. Stress interviews, luckily these don't happen too often, but it is very possible that an employer could throw in an element of stress just to see how you cope with those types of situations. So it could be something like you have a good cop, bad cop scenario going on, or maybe they're drilling you with questions or picking apart your answers, or if it's more of a sales role, maybe they'll take something from the room and say, okay, sell me this, and they'll see how you react to that. So if something like that does happen, again, just talk yourself through it in a very positive way, realize that this is just part of the process, that you can handle it, and just do your very best. Now I'd like to share a few tips for making a good impression. So it's important to remember that your interview actually starts before you meet the employer. They will Google you, so it's important to make sure that your online footprint is very professional, and even your voice message should be professional as well. I've heard stories from employers that they've called someone, didn't like their message, and hung up. So you want to make sure that that doesn't happen to you and you get to move to that next stage of setting up the interview. Be prepared, practice out loud. Like I said, that helps with flow in the moment when you have your interview. And be natural, be yourself. That's really important. Preparation is important, but it should be used as a springboard for your conversation with the employer. You want it to seem really natural. And try to use different examples. You don't always want to come back to that really fabulous project that you did, although it might be really great. It's important to use other examples in there as well. And you can actually pull from your professional life, your academic life, even your personal life or volunteer initiatives as well. And if you do need to come back to that example because it is the best one, just make sure that you come about it from a bit of a different way. Be confident and enthusiastic. They want to hire someone that they can see bringing a nice energy to the team and that fits in really nice with the team. And smiles go a long way, so make sure that you're incorporating that into your interview as well, because it shows them that you're a friendly person and that you would be a good fit for that organization. Let's talk a little bit about some of the final steps of the process. So you can ask about the next step so you know what to expect, whether they'll get back to you either way or how long the process might take. You obviously want to thank the interviewers and ask for their cards. Either ask them for their contact information or maybe someone on the admin team outside so that you can send them a follow-up letter within 24 to 48 hours. And that's absolutely fine to send that by email. That's what people tend to do these days as well. Short and sweet, professional. Just maybe helping you stand out a little bit. Be patient. I know that's hard because everybody wants to know what happened as soon as that interview is over. But if you know what the process is going to be like, it's a little bit easier to keep track of where you are in that process. And then reflect on how you did. Use it as a learning experience. So think about what went well, celebrate that, think about how you can build on that in the future, and then think about maybe what didn't go as well as you had hoped and what you would do differently next time. And I also recommend trying to write down all the questions that you can remember, because that may help you prepare for future interviews as well. Now, I'm someone who loves quotes, and I think this really fits with what we're talking about today. Success always comes when preparation meets opportunity. And if you're taking anything away from my presentation today, I'm hoping that it's that preparation is key. It allows you to be your best self in the moment, and if you're using it as a springboard for your conversation, you can be very natural with the employer, and it'll be easy for you to show them why you're a good fit for their team. I wish you all the best with your interviews in the future, and if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to come and see us at the Telfer Career Center.